Welcome everybody. So beautiful to be back with all of you. And those of you who are on retreat, I hope you had a safe trip home and you made it home all right. Yeah, so welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So our next retreat, can't believe I'm saying this, but our next retreat will be August 23rd through the 25th, a weekend retreat online. And I hope you can join us for that. Yes. Yes, and I know these last two retreats are a little bit close together, but just due to my schedule and all that I have going on, that's what we're going to do. And then after that, we'll probably have another one maybe around Thanksgiving or Christmas time, so November or the New Year. Anyways, August 23rd through the 25th online. And I need a couple days, maybe a week to get the details for that posted. You can just mark your calendars. And so I think those are all the announcements I have. Yeah. Oh, yeah. One more. On August, I think 4th. Yeah, August 4th, there'll be no satsang that evening. As far as I can tell, I may be able to pull it off, but I think I'll be traveling that weekend. Okay. So let's just take a moment here, shut down our eyes, opening our hearts, and breathing, feeling, softening, and trusting. Trusting that we can open in the here and now. Trusting that awake awareness is the very fabric of our being, the very fabric of our nature. And so I'll ask you right here, right now, what is awake? What is aware? What is this fundamental presence? That witnesses all of life. And can you give yourself permission to surrender the commentator, the complainer, and simply be this awake, aware presence? This simple, uncomplicated space of freedom, which is naturally undivided, is whole and complete. And so sometimes on the spiritual path, we forget. We forget what we are. And I am here in this moment to remind you of the beauty and the radiance, this divinity that you are. And so can you notice that your mind is vast, spacious, and free? That your heart is an immense, radiant love. That your aura is deep and wide. It is the very fabric of life itself. And of course, if we let go of any dividing lines inside between the chakra centers, you see all of this is simply you. And how beautiful it is. How beautiful to be this awake, aware, radiant presence. How beautiful. And our mind can take us here and there, rush us up or down and all around. But I ask you, can you be this simple presence? Not chasing, not wanting. What is life like to be this simple radiance? And can you allow yourself to get comfortable here? In this deep knowing that what you are is good, is true, is beautiful, is so utterly radiant. And so just taking a moment and checking in with the body, and if there's anything here that could relax a little bit more fully, if there's anything here could use some love, anything here that could use a greater sense of compassion, please. We breathe, we feel, we soften, we surrender. We meet it all with love. We meet it all with love. And so you can gently open your eyes, and I welcome you into this space. And I'd like to start tonight. So this gentle teaching I heard from uh, the great Zen master, Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. I was listening to him, and he told this story once of this possibility. It's kind of a terrible possibility, but it's like an old Buddhist story. It's kind of fun just to imagine yourself, in this situation. But let's just say, for example, like you're walking alone one day. Let's say you're in a big open field, somewhere far away from any others, maybe just going for a little walk. And you fall down into a well. And, the purpose of this story is just to imagine how your mind would respond, how your body would respond, how your emotional nature would respond. And just this basic question of what would actually be helpful? What would be helpful? So if we see this well as a pit of suffering, and this is really what life is like sometimes, like all of a sudden you find yourself in a deep hole of your own suffering. And again, if no one is around, it's just you in this hole of suffering, how will you respond? Is it worth your time to blame others or yourself or yourself for falling in the hole? Like, does it do anything for you to blame? Of course, we see certainly not. Like, we fall down into a hole. We have to get out of this hole, but blame is not going to help us. How about self-hatred? If we fall down into this hole and we hate ourselves, like, is that going to help us? No, of course not. Of course not. How about self-judgment? Will that do anything? Nope. This won't help us either. Fantasizing about a future when we're out of the hole is not going to help us. These are all ways that perpetuate our own suffering. How about if we fall down in that hole and we doubt? I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever make it out. I don't know if I'll survive. Maybe I should try this way. No, like, don't try that. Maybe I should try this other way. No, I don't think that'll work either. And so doubting ourselves, again, will just perpetuate our suffering. And, I really thought this was a funny and beautiful metaphor, because this is really what it's like on the spiritual path. Is we can play this game of blame. We can take on the identity of being a victim and saying, it's not fair. It's not fair. They traumatized me. They hurt me. But again, that's not going to get us out of this hole of suffering. Once upon a time, someone really hurt me in a deep way. I felt incredibly betrayed by them. And I spent a couple years just like spinning in circles in anger and confusion, why they did this, and this isn't fair, and this isn't right. And my life came to a screeching halt. And I began to feel just this tremendous weight of panic on my chest. there was all these feelings that I wasn't feeling and experiencing and letting go. I was just in this story in my head. They shouldn't have done this. This isn't fair. This isn't right. How come God, let this happen? This kind of thing. We've all done this before, right? Where we found ourselves just spinning. And I've had this experience many, many times just because I live out in the country, and it's actually the first time in my life when I haven't owned a pickup truck. But there's this thing that happens in pickup trucks. You take them out in the mud sometimes. And you think a big 4-wheel drive pickup truck can drive through anything, but sometimes it's a big, heavy truck. It's like heavy in the front, but the bed of it is light. And it does this funny thing where the truck just gets stuck in the mud. And the back wheels, you keep hitting the gas, and it actually digs a deeper hole, deeper rut. And if if you don't know what you're doing, you'll create such a rut that the like the bottom of the truck, is sitting in the earth, and then it's really not going to move. Then you need like a backhoe or something to get that thing out of there. But anyways, we do this sometimes. We just spin our wheels. We think, we doubt, we fantasize, we judge, we blame, we wish it wasn't so. But none of this helps us. And so the whole point of this story is the great Thich Nhat Hanh was teaching. He was saying, if we want to get out of this hole, we have to develop a concentration. We have to have a one-pointedness. A one-pointedness. We can't be thinking about, I wonder what I'll be eating for dinner tomorrow night. It's like, no, we're in a hole. We're stuck in the well. How are we going to get out of this thing? How are we going to get out? What is it that this situation calls for? Now, of course, like in real life, if we fell in this well, we'd have to learn how to climb like an animal, like a monkey. We'd have to, really dig, our hands into the wall and our feet into the wall and make some little steps and get ourselves up and out of there. But whatever our particular journey is on this path with our own suffering, I mean, we all have our own wells of suffering. And we have to ask ourselves really honestly, what is it that I need? Do I need more blame? Like, should I continue blaming my brother? Like, should I continue blaming my brother? I can remember when I was a young kid, right about 14, 15 years old. I was one of those kids who was like the youngest kid in the class, like one of those kids. And so all my friends started getting cars, when they turned 16. I had friends who were turning 16 when I was 14. And, I lived way out in the country, and, my family was, just middle class, but, we didn't have lots of money. My parents certainly weren't going to buy, and they certainly weren't going to buy me a car. My parents told me, you have whatever you want, get a job and pay for it. That's the kind of family I grew up in. And, so I went and I got a job, and, I did my did my thing. But some of the high school that I went to had some real, had some of us who were like lower middle class, and then others who were quite wealthy. And so, there's a couple of kids in the class who would get like a BMW or something from their parents. Again, I'd never buy a 16-year-old BMW. Like that's a stupid thing. But and then other parents are buying their kids, like a brand new car, and any kind of car, just brand new. It is a sweet thing for a 16-year-old, but also again a bad idea because that car is probably going to get wrecked. But anyways, I had a couple friends who I saw were really sad, really angered that they were born into a family that didn't have too much money, and they weren't going to get that brand new car. And I can remember these kids just like really pouting and this and that. And I have to say, like, I thought it was kind of stupid, kind of immature. Like, to me, I would never expect my parents to buy me a car. Maybe get a hand-me-down car. But my first car was a 1973 Volkswagen Super Beetle, and didn't have any heat. It was all rusted out on the bottom, and it was so cold to drive in. Sometimes the window would freeze over in the wintertime, and because it didn't have any heat, I literally have to stick my head out the window and drive the car to school. And luckily, the school is about 5 miles away, but it was cold, to say the least. It was cold. But many of us, we just get lost. We get lost in our mind of what we think we deserve, and take that real personally. I just listened to what my parents said. They said, you can have whatever you want, just get a job. And so I was like, okay. And I already had a job. I was at a part-time job since I was 14, and it'd be full-time in the summers. But I just knew, like, if I fall in the well, I'm going to get myself out of this well. Now, if I fall in, I might have a good cry first and be like, oh no, like this is a terrible thing. But then after I have that cry, it's like we have to wipe our tears. And then we have to concentrate. How do I get myself out of this situation? How do I get myself out of this situation? But so many of this in the modern age, we don't ask, how do I? How do I? A lot of us say things like, why is this happening to me? But again, a question of why is this happening to me? It doesn't do anything for the fact that we're suffering. Judging ourselves or judging another, blaming our parents, blaming our brother, doesn't do anything for us. Now, we can, just from a psychological perspective, admit a truth. Like, oh, my brother pushed me in this well. Like, we can admit the truth, and we can validate and say that wasn't fair and this hurt. And then we have a good cry. But at the end of the day, we have to live our own life. We have to live our own life. One of my best friends here, he went skiing one day, and there's this whole thing at the ski resort, close by us is, it's in the national forest. So if you ski out of bounds, which is like, it can be like a cool thing to do, be like, oh yeah, I'm skiing out of bounds. But if you ski out of bounds and get lost, you could be in big trouble. And so this fella, this friend of mine, he skied out of bounds and he got lost. And so here he was, like out in the back country. And when we go skiing in the wintertime, it's dark like at 5 p.m. So 5 p.m. comes along and it's dark outside. And he knows that he better just keep moving all night. Because, if you're at 9,000-10,000 feet in the mountains and, deep snow, like you better move that body, you're going to freeze to death. And so he walked. I laugh because he's a friend of mine and we joke about it, but he walked, and you call it post-holing when you walk in snow and it's so deep that it goes, all the way up to your hips. So you put one foot in and it's a post hole, and you put the next foot in and it's a post hole. And he walked and walked and walked. And then right about 8 a.m., he made his way back to the lift. And that's when they turned the lifts on again. And so he was the first one on the lift at 8 a.m. His beard was just covered in ice and this and that. And he rode the lift up to the top of the mountain, rode the trail down to the parking lot, and drove home. And he had a good story to tell. Good story that he wasn't dead. And sometimes on the spiritual path, it's like that we walk this path alone. It's us. It's us making the steps. Now, like I was teaching on the retreat, we can always call upon support. We can call upon God. We can call upon our angels. We can call upon heavenly beings to give us the strength to continue walking, to give us the strength to continue showing up, to give us the strength to forgive or to love or to surrender or to begin again. We can call upon support. So in one sense, we are alone. And in another sense, God, who is omnipresent, is always with us. And of course, if we're in a hole, again, a hole of suffering, and we're spinning in our minds saying, this isn't fair, God did this to me, saying this should have happened to someone else, why does this always happen to me, who made this well anyway, why'd they leave it uncovered, all these things we can spin in. But again, it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us to blame. It doesn't help us to judge. It may help us, and it probably will help us, to pray, to call for support, to invite the intelligence of God to wake up in us and to move through us, to live through us, to give us the strength to climb. I can tell you all this, that it was so beautiful to be on retreat with so many of you at Kripalu. And I love Kripalu. It's just such a wonderful place, wonderful retreat center. And what a gift it was to be there. But also I'll say, I'm so happy to be home back in Colorado. And so I got home real late the other night. Actually got home Saturday morning, like at 1 a.m. And, yesterday I was just kind of settling in and doing chores at the house and this and that. But today I got to get out, and my little girl was feeling a little stir crazy. And I was just like, come on with Dad. Let's go climbing. And so I packed up the gear and got us all geared up. And, we went up to our local climbing crag, and she, she's done a little bit of rock climbing. She does she's done a lot of like, like climbing, just like playing around at the rec center and this and that. But I'm like, let's go out climbing for real. And so we got up to this, a beginner's wall. She's 10, for those of you who don't know her. And, she started to climb up a little bit. And she said, Daddy, I'm scared. I said, it's all right. We got a rope on you. Like you're going to be okay. And I told her, like, just lean back a little bit. And she's like, no, I don't want to. And I said, okay, just then keep climbing up. She climbed up a little bit more and she said, okay, Daddy, I'm done. And I'm like, no, let's keep climbing, sweetheart. And she's like, but I can't do it. And I said, just keep trying. Keep trying. And she tried a little bit over here and was slipping all over the place. I said, why don't you try over there? And so she tried to climb over on the left side and started to get some footholds. And she slipped a little bit. And she got frustrated. And I said, sweetie, let's just keep trying. And she started making some progress and getting up there. And she made it almost all the way to the top. And then she slipped. And the rope caught her. And the rope caught her. And when the rope caught her, she relaxed a little bit. And so I had to remind her, that's like, hey, your daddy's got you here. And the rope's got you. You're safe. You're safe. It's okay to climb. It's okay to fail. It's okay to try again. It's okay to slip a little bit more and fail again. But this rope's got you and your daddy's got you here. And she said, okay. Then she said, I'm done. And I'm like, nope, no, let's not be done. I was like, I want you to try again. And she tried again. And, this is kind of like the crux where she had to get up, just a little bit more. And, she really struggled. And she made it up on this little ledge. And I was like, okay, good. And she's like, all right, Dad, I'm done. I'm ready to come down. And I was like, no, let's keep going a little bit more. A little bit more. A little bit more. She said, I can't do it. And I said, I bet you can. She said, I can't. I said, I bet you can. And I started hollering at her, like really cheering her on. And she got up a little more, and then she failed, and then got up a little bit more, and then she failed again, and then got up a little bit more, and then she hit those chains. She had this big smile on her face. Big smile. She made it to the top. I let out a big, a big hoot and a big holler for my sweetheart who made it to the top. And see, I knew she could do it. Sometimes when we have a mind that's a naysayer, or when we haven't done something before, she's climbed other things, but this is definitely the hardest climb for her by far. And sometimes if we have a naysayer in our mind, there's a lot of things our mind will tell us that you can't do, that you're incapable of, that you don't deserve. When we come into our true mind, which is connected to the intelligence and strength of God, the great love and radiance of our being, we come to see that in God, in truth, all things are possible. But if we rely on our human mind, a lot of us won't get out the door. We won't get out the door. We'll say, oh, I can't do it. I don't feel right. I don't have the right this or that. Like this spiritual path is a path that demands that we continue to show up. We continue to open. We continue to trust. We continue to surrender. If we're going to get anywhere on the spiritual path. We have to say no to that which is untrue and an absolute yes to that which is. But sometimes we don't know what's possible. And when we don't know what's possible, it's important to have faith and to have hope. Faith and hope. There's just a real positive sense of hope that I can pull this off. That life is here to support me. Even if we are in a hole. Even if we are in a hole. Sometimes it can be helpful to see that we are in this hole for a reason. But again, many of us don't want to admit this, because oftentimes that reason is our own self. Like many of us, we make ourselves sick with our own thoughts. We make ourselves sick because we're unwilling to let go of the past. We make ourselves sick repeating a story that I'm in danger, that I'm traumatized, that I can't. And oftentimes the first step in healing is a willingness to let go of that old story and to look for another way. To look for another way. Say, there's got to be another way here. Another way. And that way, of course, is going to be a way of love, of truth, of surrender. Of you coming to know your divine strength. And divine strength often comes through outliving failure. Egoic strength comes from working hard and then often having a series of success. But divine strength comes through showing up and failing and continuing to try again. Continuing to try again. Sometimes divine strength comes just purely through failure. We just fail and fail and fail. And we wake up and we realize the thing that I've been fighting with, it didn't kill me, it didn't harm me. And I will outlive this great tragedy, this great trauma, this great misfortune. I'll outlive it. I'll outlive it. I may not overcome it and dominate it and be successful and get revenge and all that other egoic stuff. But I'll outlive it. And the outliving of it is an invitation for forgiveness, of letting go, of releasing that thing so it no longer has power over us. And so I'm going to invite you all as to take a moment and just ask, like, what is my personal well? Like, what is the well that I've fallen in, that I've struggled with? Like, what is that well? Like, what is my growing edge? And then, of course, we ask, and what does this situation need from me? What is it calling forth from deep within? What is it asking to arise out of the depths of my being? What greater truth will get me out of this well? Will get me out of this well? And am I willing to let go of any of my guilt or my judgment or my blame in regard to this well I find myself in? Am I willing to surrender my story and get on with the business of freeing myself from this difficulty I find myself in? And so, let's see here. Was an emailed question. Let me check it out. Hi, Craig. What do you do? I love this question already. When you absolutely hate someone, but you know they are completely innocent. I know I learned that hatred from a place. I know I learned that hatred from a place outside myself. I know it's not mine, but I feel like my body has taken ownership of it. Feels awful when I can feel it, but it's largely numb, and I feel shame for how I ignore it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful question. Beautiful question. And I commend the person who brought this question forward, because so many of us in the spiritual world, we're just busy on our spiritual path, polishing our spiritual ego, trying to present to the world that I am this sweet, holier than thou human being. And I don't have thoughts of hatred. No, no, I do not. Not I. I don't have any thoughts of hatred. And that's what a lot of spiritual people do and say. So when we have hatred, I want to encourage you to let it burn. Like, let that thing burn. Let it cook. Let it heat up. Let it off gas. It needs to. It needs to. If we let the hatred burn, it will release itself in its own heat and its own fire. But if we cool the hatred through the dance of repression, well, that hatred will make us sick. Will make us sick. And so the first step, it sounds like you're beginning to do it, is acknowledging it, bringing it into the light, saying, this is an issue that I have. I have hatred. I have hatred. And with hatred, hatred is it's a terrible thing to work with. But if it's within us, we need to work with it. We need to work with this thing. And we need to let it burn. We need to let it heat up. Taylor brought this up in the retreat. We need to give it full permission to be here. Full permission. Full permission. Because again, when we repress it, it'll make us sick if we repress it long enough. If we repress it, it'll create issues in our belly. If we repress it, it will shut off our heart. It'll shut off our heart. And so it can be important. It can be necessary. I'm even going to say this. It can be fun. Like, I used to do this thing with journals, just like a notebook. I'd get one of those cheap notebooks. They used to be like 69 cents or something, or you get them for $0.25 at the back to school sale, with inflation, I don't know how much a spiral notebook costs anymore, but I used to get these notebooks and I would just unload my feelings into them. I don't know what it is about a cheap notebook and a pen, but if I can sit down, like if I'm just walking around and I have all this hatred within me and it's spinning in my head, it just feels like toxic hell. It just feels like my blood is being filled with this toxicity. But I've gotten these cheap notebooks before, and I just start writing, I hate this, that, this, and that. This isn't fair. This isn't right. This, and really just vomit it out on paper. Really just vomit it out on paper. And there's something I haven't been so successful with computers, but with typing, but on paper, something with allowing the thoughts to almost like travel down my arm, out the fingers, out the pen onto paper, and it's just like, it's just like getting it just out of me, just out of me. And the beauty of it, like with a cheap notebook, not like some fancy sweet journal, like not one of those. I'm talking a cheap notebook. You can rip up those papers, you can tear them up, you can throw them in the garbage can, shooting some hoops. But the way I really like to practice this is kind of a tantric thing is, and I've said this before, I said this recently, but I'll just say it again for those of you who haven't heard this. I might write a letter to the person who I hate. So I write that letter, and then I come into the consciousness of my heart, the goodness of my heart, and I read the letter out loud, listening from my heart, validating the pain that this guy named Craig went through at the hands or the whatever, the actions of someone else. And then I put it away. I get it out the next day. Again, come into the compassion of my heart, and I read it out loud, and I hear the pain and the suffering of this guy, Craig, who's been experiencing this pain. I'm validating it. And I put it away, get it out on the third day. Again, come into the compassion of the heart, read it one more time. Really validating, have a good cry if I need to. And then I have a fire ceremony and I burn it up. I burn that letter. And it can be real beautiful if you have like a little sweet place, whether it's your backyard or go on a little hike. Don't burn the forest down, of course. Go sit by the ocean and we torch that thing. And so we're working with fire. Working with fire. And then afterwards, I'm going to encourage you to smudge yourself. Smudge yourself. There's something just so utterly healing about sage. Now, I live in a place where I can just go pick my own sage, but you might have to go down to the spiritual bookstore and get some sage. But yeah, burn it up. Burn it up. So that's one way. The big thing is you being honest and admitting it. A different way. And again, we played with this on retreat is laying down, hand on your heart, a hand on your belly. I like to put my feet together in Baddha Konasana. There's something with like the hips being open like that, like the 2 feet together, and the hips kind of laying open that makes one feel vulnerable and open. And it does something that helps us to really let go. And so you can hold and rub your heart, your belly, acknowledging your pain, acknowledging your suffering, you validating you, you loving you, you honoring you, you embracing you. And what's important is that we stay away from our thoughts. And we just feel the pain. Normally when we feel the pain of anger, and we feel it very intimately, we'll notice that right under the surface of it is sadness. And if we give ourselves permission first to fully feel the anger and then to feel the sadness under it, and as that sadness burns off, often what we're left with is this very tender and innocent form of compassion. And what you'll find is, from this perspective of compassion, you'll see that, oh, like this one has suffered so much here on planet Earth. And oh, this one who hurt me has also suffered so much. And they don't know what the hell they're doing in this world. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They don't even know why they're hurting me. They're lost. I feel lost. But as we drop through the layers of emotion, there's this recognition of, I'm not really lost. I just found the ground of compassion, the ground of truth, the ground of being. And so through doing this type of emotional work, through a willingness to fully feel the hatred and then the sadness that's underneath it, compassion arises. And then forgiveness, it just naturally happens. Forgiveness almost becomes a byproduct. So this state of awake awareness that is connected to the heart, when we're in awake awareness, which is connected to the heart, it's easy to forgive. But when we're in our mind thinking about how wrong it is that this person hurt us, how unfair it was, we'll never forgive. We'll never forgive. But the stages of grief, they take time. They take time, and it's important that you allow yourself to go through all the stages. Sometimes people think they're going to start with acceptance, and acceptance is at the end of the journey. At the end of the journey, not the beginning. And there's something about being human that, we need to fully feel our emotions and own them before we can give them away, before we can surrender them. And again, Taylor was really sharing his experience with this on retreat. Just like really giving it all permission to be here and not making any of it wrong. So we don't want to start our journey of grieving and letting go with hatred is wrong. I'm not allowed to have hatred. We want to start it with, of course, I'm so angry. Of course, I want to kill this person. Of course, I'm furious. Of course, I am. Of course. So it's this radical honesty and giving oneself total permission. And like AA plays this game with addiction. It's like, of course, I'm addicted to alcohol. Like, of course I am. Of course. Of course. I've suffered so greatly. I've used this substance as a way to run from my pain. Of course I did that. Of course. Of course. And there's this thing like an A of like testifying, like admitting the terrible, horrible truth of addiction. Admitting I am so angry and righteous, and I think I know what should and shouldn't happen, and damn it, I can't hold on to my righteousness any longer because it's just like, it's not getting me anywhere. And so now I admit the anger that's behind it. And then I admit the sadness that's underneath that. And I drop through the layers and I stay with the truth. I stay with the truth, not with a fantasy. Because sometimes with hatred, we can really get lost in revenge fantasies. I can't remember. Someone brought this up on retreat, but it was just great to hear. It's like, yeah, revenge fantasy. Like sometimes I have these revenge says, I'm going to get them. I'm going to make them pay. And the problem with having a heart, like let's just say we go with that revenge fantasy. If your heart is remotely open, your heart's not going to let you get revenge. It just won't. It just won't. It just won't. Like your heart will stop you in your tracks. And so revenge is not the way. But something we lost touch with in our culture is that grieving frees us from hatred. Grieving frees us from hate. Grieving frees us from so much. From so much. So much. So much. But many people are just terrified of grieving because it makes them feel vulnerable in a way where they feel out of control. Whereas like with hatred, there's this false like fantasy in it and false sense of control that I'm going to get them. I'm going to make them pay. And, in order to let go of it, we have to admit like this crazy truth. And our mind doesn't like crazy truths. Our mind likes idea of righteousness and justice, and I'm going to get my way. But many of us, we have to be willing to admit this crazy truth that we live in a wild world and all kinds of painful, unexpected things will happen in this world. Things that we can't control, things that we can't resist, things that just come and slap us in the face. Yeah, and give us a big bucket of cold water down our neck. And it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Didn't see it coming. I got on this plane the other day and it's a 4.5 hour flight. I ran to that flight, to get there. And, I just made the flight. I'm like, okay, we got 4.5 hours on this little box. And I don't like being on planes. I don't like flying. I don't like being just smashed into a little box, just like my body doesn't like it. I like big open spaces. It's what I like. And we got on that plane. The captain's like, hey, we're just not able to take off. We don't have any drinks. And I was like, come on, man. Like, let's get this plane moving. Let's get it moving. We sat on the runway for an hour and a half. Like this 4.5 hour flight became a 6 hour flight with an hour and a half just sitting on the ground. And I was like, come on, man. Put this plane in the air. Like, let's get us out of here. But like, so much of life is out of our control. Where we do have the control when we're stuck in that well is how we respond. How we respond. Can we be relaxed and at ease when we're in a situation where someone wastes an hour and a half of our time? Can we be relaxed and at ease? Can we choose to respond with compassion? Can we choose to soften and have patience? Can we choose, like sometimes the choice is just like, I don't have patience. I don't have anything right now, but I can practice. I can practice. I can sit and I can breathe. I can sit and I can breathe. I even tried to like get my phone working and hook up to one of those in-flight entertainment, watch a movie or something. And for some reason my phone just would not work. And I just like, okay, I'm just going to sit. I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to sit and breathe. I'm going to sit and breathe. And sit and breathe. And sit and breathe. Sometimes that's all we got. But sometimes that's the thing that saves us. Is a willingness to sit and breathe. And in this case, in relationship to hatred, we let the story burn up in the light and the clarity of our own truth. We sit and we let it burn. We let it burn. Yeah, beautiful question. Beautiful question. Let's see what David Morris writes. Grieving, meaning admitting the pain of the situation, including its injustice and the fact that it cannot be fixed. Accept it as a reality. Yeah. Thank you, David. Yeah. Melanie writes, grieving is the last threshold to the overwhelming vulnerability of love. Yeah. And yes, you are right. The real name of anger is grief. Yeah, beautiful, Melanie. Beautiful. She goes on to write, thank you, Craig. Repressed hatred for years burned me up alive inside. Female conditioning of needing to be a good girl and to stay safe and loved did not help. Thank you for emphasizing allowing it fully. Big change always happens for me when I allowed myself to burn with rage and turn it into fire for myself. Yeah, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. You guys are writing all kinds of funny things in the comments. Okay, let's see here. Blair writes, what do you do with feeling impatient or desperate to get somewhere on the path, even though you know there's nowhere to go? You're feeling impatient or desperate to get somewhere on the path. Yeah, normally we're feeling impatient and then desperate because there's something big here that we don't want to feel. That we don't want to feel. And so it's a good question. Like, what is it that I don't want to feel? What is it that I don't want to experience? You know, and the great nun Pema Chodron, she's written, I don't know what it is, maybe 5, maybe 10 books. I know at least 5 just about this, just sitting with the places that scare us, sitting with the places that are hot, feel claustrophobic. And like her whole teaching revolves around this one thing. This is the path of we sit and we open and we feel the things we don't want to feel. We feel them. And Blair, we spoke about this on retreat. We feel them. We let them burn. We let ourselves become huge in this heat, in this fire. We let it burn. We let it burn. We become the burn itself. We become the fire itself. And there's this wonderful intersection with when we feel like impatience, it has a heat to it. And when we allow ourselves to feel that heat, we become quite powerful. And we lose our impatience. And by that, I mean like the impatience disappears. It burns up in the heat. But if we don't feel it fully, the impatience will intensify and we'll have a feeling of desperation. And so that's one way of just letting it heat up. On the flip side, if there's desperation here, again, it means there's something within us that's suffering. And then the great question is always is, can we meet this with love? This part of us that's suffering. Can we see her? Can we breathe into her? Can we know her? Can we allow her to scream and shout and kick and cry? Can we allow her to fully experience all the emotion that's behind the desperation? And as we feel it fully, we find again that impatience burns up in the willingness to totally feel. Totally feel. Like when we feel fully, the impatience falls away. If there's any, even if it's just like sometimes it's just a teeny little part of us that's resisting something, but just that teeny little part can create a great feeling of desperation. And sometimes when we're far along the path, it's that last 10%, that we need to feel before the big shift happens. And so anyways, these are beautiful questions. Beautiful questions. when we do this, just the last part of Blair's question, to get somewhere on the path, even though you know there's nowhere to get. When we have full willingness to feel everything, that's when we experience the here now fully. And that's different than like knowing, like I know, like there's nowhere to go. But we will know it truly experientially once we felt all that's here. But whenever there's anything within us that's unresolved, there is somewhere to get. And that place is, it's called the full willingness to be with what is, to be with this most unpleasant experience. And again, like that's what I was saying, like if I fall in a well, I need to have a good cry first. I have to be like, oh, geez, like we might die down here in this well all by ourselves. Like we might die down here in this well all by ourselves. Like I need to feel the whole thing fully and have a good cry. And then after I have a good cry, it's like, okay, now how the hell am I going to get out of this thing? Like, how am I going to get out of this thing? How? Okay, start digging some handholds in this wall. So anyways. Okay. All right. I think that's probably a good place. We're going to switch and do something different now. I'm going to invite prayers. So if anyone needs a prayer, put your name and what it's about in the chat and start us off with our dear friend Damani in the Sangha. Has gotten COVID. And so Amani there in the Los Angeles area, who is a great goddess, a bright being of light. Let us see Amani filled up with love, filled up with heavenly support, filled up with the highest truth, and let us see her body healing and returning to health swiftly. We call upon Amani's angels to be with her, to aid her, to guide her, to support her, to uplift her while she goes through this difficult time. And so much love to Imani. Okay. We're going to pray for John. I'm going to call him Father John. Kyle's saying I lost his car key. He might be late to his pilgrimage in Toronto. Okay, so we'll call upon the forces of support for John to find the keys, to make the car work, to find support, a new key, whatever it is. And we'll bless Father John on his journey, his pilgrimage to Toronto. May his angels be with him. May he be led, guided, and supported on this journey of truth. Okay, beautiful. Tyler writes, please pray for great Aunt Nancy, who just got COVID for the first time at her son's birthday party. All these people getting COVID. God, getting COVID for the first time. I've had it like 5 times already. Okay, great Aunt Nancy, we want you to be healthy, happy, and strong. We pray for a swift healing for you. May your body heal. May your body recover. May you be upheld in the light. May you be upheld in the light. Great Aunt Nancy. And so for all of us here in the Sangha, we ask that we'll be supported in love, supported in truth. Oh, great Lord of Lords, we ask you to give us the strength to take our next step on this path in this world, that our hearts are filled of love, that you give us the strength to forgive those who have harmed us, who've caused pain to us, who've caused us suffering. May we forgive, may we open, may we love, may we stand in the highest truth now and forevermore. Okay, everyone, so beautiful to be with you. I told you our next retreat August 23rd through the 25th, weekend retreat. Hope to see you there. Details will be coming soon. May love triumph throughout our world. May these great wars in Ukraine and Israel and Yemen, just throughout all the world, may people put down the fight. May human beings pick up the sword of peace, the sword of truth, the sword of love, and walk in the direction of the awakening and the birthing of this universal love for all of us here on planet Earth. May the earth be restored to a harmonious balance. May humans and the animals and planet kingdoms learn to get along in great harmony. May the oceans be healed. May all of life be uplifted. Okay, so much love to all of you. Good night, everyone. Good to be with you. See you soon.